said was God's gift for everyone. And so I don't think Ignatius himself would mind that a low church Baptist in the East End of London has now kind of incorporated it into her life and now into my community's life. So those of us that have joined in for the morning pause, in my community, we do that at 8 o'clock every weekday, online or in person. And on Fridays, we do an examen together. That's just the pattern that we've fallen into. And in the Jesuit order, it was one of the few rules for daily life that Ignatius set up for his community. And they would do an examen twice a day, an examen prayer, lunchtime and at the end of the day. So my once a week, doesn't look that great really, then does it? And there's always 5 steps, but they're quite fluid really. They, you can just, they're principles rather than strict adherence required. They're principles in it. And I think we've probably, the one that we're going to do together is probably like the Bonnie Downs version of the Ignatian examen. And it's probably informed also because I think as a community we wanted to address some of the ways that in my own church tradition we've focused on original sin and the idea that we're sort of intrinsically bad and need saving. And what's lovely about the way that we practice the examen is that we seek for our authentic self, which is good and which is in line with the characteristics of God's missional heart. So I'll lead you through it. And I just want to say thank you for trusting me to lead you. But probably don't know me at all. So there's an element of trust involved with anyone leading you in a spiritual practice. Last thing I'll say before we actually do it was I was kind of thinking, how did Ignatius stumble on this? I stumbled on it because there was a definite lack within my own spirituality, to a lack of contemplation. So I stumbled on it out of knowing if I didn't find some spiritual depth, I would burn out. And then I read that Ignatius, his massive conversion, midlife conversion, happened after a really serious injury. So he was hit by a cannonball defending a citadel. He had the most horrendous leg injury. And the bones were set wrongly, incorrectly. And he had to go and have sort of reconstructive surgery on his legs at a time when there was no anaesthetic. So, traumatic, painful experiences, which took many months to recover from. And then he did his recovery in a place called Loyola, and he became, that's where he kind of had his conversion experience and started the Jesuit community. But I did think it was interesting that he was defending a citadel when he was attacked, because in other of his writings, he describes the examen as walking with Jesus around the walls of the city of your life. So just imagine a walled city, and you stop every now and again, you just walk around the walls and you notice where the weak spots are in the walls. So you're intentionally looking at your life to say, where are the flaws and the fractures? But that's just one of the stages of the examen. But the lovely thing is, he pictures the devil as a lion outside the walls, but recognises that our lives are only really ever attacked successfully at our weakest points. And so you're sort of inviting Jesus to say, show me my true self. Show me my true self. And it's not condemnation. It's awareness. It's insight that you're seeking. And then obviously, you're with Jesus, who is not looking at you in condemning eyes, but loves you and is looking at you as your authentic, truest self. I think it's just a beautiful way to see what the examen is. I also think of it as rummaging through. Everyone's got a drawer in their kitchen which is full of useful but fairly random content, right? And the phone charger you need is in there somewhere, but you kind of have to rummage to find it. And the examen prayer is a rummaging through the day to find the presence of God in it. It's in there somewhere and you just rummage. Okay, so if you're okay and you trust me, let me lead you in it. You can turn your screens on or off. You might want to close your eyes or not. This will take us up to 10 o'clock, a little bit earlier if we finish earlier. Just encourage you to sit somewhere where it's unlikely you'll be disturbed. You might need to turn your phone off. You can close your eyes if that helps. I always sit in this chair, you can tell really, got my little sacred place. It just is a signal to me that I've come to be attentive to God now. And I sit centered. So I put both feet on the floor, which is unusual for me. And I sit sort of upright. And this is a signal to me that I've come to be alert to the presence of God. So I encourage you to do whatever you need to physically to get into that stance. Some people kneel. And take a big, deep, filling breath. And a slow exhale. Repeat it a few times. Reminding your body now that you've come to be still and attentive. And the first movement of the Examen is to become aware of God's presence. And very often Ignatius taught his community to focus on light, to welcome light. Now, if you're sitting somewhere that you can see some beautiful light streaming in a window, or you've got a memory perhaps of walking out of a wood into a glade and the light that comes there, or you've ever witnessed a sunrise, spend a few moments meditating on how beautiful it is to be bathed in light. The warmth of the light, the revealing nature of light. Just like a plant, we would turn our face towards the light. Let's give a minute for that. Just bathe in the light of God's presence. Second movement, let's invite Jesus to review the day with us. And let's search for things that we can be truly grateful for in the last 24 hours. Small things or substantial things. whatever was good, whatever was lovely, beauty. What did you hear? What did you see? You may have been too busy to really dwell there. What was it that was good? Spend the next couple of minutes, and if you're a sharer, you can share in the chat. Don't miss a tiny bit. Go back through the day. There was goodness there. If it helps you, even looking around you in your environment now, notice the things that are beautiful. Things that give you joy. If we practice this in a community that we know well, it's good to actually confess them to each other, the goodness of the day, the moments that were just lovely, that were uplifting. I have to say, it's probably my favourite bit of the Examen. The third movement is to become attentive to the emotions of the day. And in our community, we narrow that down to think about where we contributed to the goodness of the last day. Now, we do that as a corrective to our own particular denominational tendency to think of confession as being about our original sin or badness. And so we're addressing that by looking back over the day and noticing where we lived our authentic, true selves, where we contributed to the goodness of the day. And it could be that you contributed by not doing things, by taking time to rest, that the kingdom of God was expressed in you not taking charge of something. And we love to use the words kanaki of God, the rule of love. So where did you live according to the rule of love yesterday? Confess that this is your truest self, your authentic self. Where did you contribute to the rule of love? Have a rummage. It can be tiny. Stopping to talk with somebody who served you in a shop. Deleting an email you were going to send because it wasn't kind. This is an little temporary community at Red Letters, and you might not know each other very well, but it is really good to write them down in the comments if you want to. Confessing your authentic, truest self. And obviously, if you practice this in your own community, it becomes very lovely to hear the moments that the community blessed the world by living with the rule of love. We also encourage one another to think about the goodness of that, how it felt to be able to contribute to the goodness of the day, the purposeful feeling. Perhaps your contribution was to be creative, and you had that wonderful thing where you just almost lose track of time, kind of in the zone, living a really authentic part of who you are. And it's a lovely feeling, isn't it? You become completely unself-conscious and you're just taken up in some creative task, which is really authentically at the heart of who you are. Just remind yourself how good that feels. That's our positive confession that we are created good and our authentic self is to live within the rule of love. And even on the toughest day, if you have a good rummage, you'll find moments where you lived your authentic self. The fourth movement is to focus on one feature of the day. In our community, we like to balance our confession by thinking of how we got in the way of that rule of love. So go back over the last 24 hours. Where did you get in the way? This is a bit like inviting Jesus to walk around the walls, the gates. Because very often, as you do this regularly, you'll notice that the thing that happened in the day has a root There's a flaw, often an insecurity, which creates repeated patterns which get in the way. If I was going to be very Baptist, I would say besetting sins. Where did you get in the way of having a really good day? And if you want to go deep, can you see a pattern? Does your need to control get in the way? A personal insecurity. In a community where you know each other, you would again share that. And if you trust our community and if it's helpful to you, you can go ahead and put in the comments whether you have any insight now. But there was a feature of the day that was actually quite revealing in terms of showing you how you have this flaw, a perpetual way that you get in the way of the day. Again, in community life, this is very helpful as a shared confession because we can listen to each other. We can pray. It's very humbling for leaders to share. And also we can correct it if people are kind of condemning themselves. Rather than healthily inviting Jesus to give us an awareness. Where do you get in the way? And what's the root of that? Finally, the fifth movement of the examen is to look forward. Now, that's the joy of doing this daily, is that you would just look forward to this day and you'd think, knowing what I know from my examen, what do I need from God to live well today? What do I need to live well today? Now, when Johnny leads this in our community, he says, what does Jesus pray for on your behalf today? Excuse me. And I don't limit myself to something spiritual, like, often we think about fruit of the Spirit that we need. I think it can be really practical as well. Do you need practical help today? Do you need healing today? Do you need a friend today? Well, go ahead, you know, confess that need, ask God. Fully confident that if we ask him for bread, he's not going to give us a stone. You know, God can interpret these prayers that we make. What do we need? We typically end by using a prayer that's written by Patrick O'Torma. I know that's like mirror writing, I think it comes out for you, but it's from this very well thumbed book, Daily Prayer with the Coromila community, and just give loads of credit to Patrick O'Torma here. And we usually use the prayer for courage from this book as a way of summing up our examen. And so I'll just read that to you. Courage comes from the heart, and we are always welcomed by God, the Cree, the heart of all being. We bear witness to our faith, knowing that we are called to live lives of courage, love, and reconciliation in the ordinary and extraordinary moments of each day. We bear witness to our failures and our complicity in the fractures of our world. May we be courageous today. May we learn today. May we love today. Amen.
Thanks, Sally. Thanks, everyone. We'll just finish there and we will come back again at 10:30 for a simplicity workshop with August Gowan from Minimalist Living UK. Okay. Enjoy the rest of the day, whatever you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.
Bye.
Danielle?
Yes.
Could you stay on for 5 minutes?
Yes. Hang on a second. Let me stop the recording.